Okay, Zebu Live. I hope everyone has had an amazing conference. We are going to be back bigger and better next year. But don't forget, the day is just getting started. We have the after party, one of London's most iconic venues, with one of the most iconic hip-hop artists, Madlib. Woo! The team are telling me you need to register for Coco links. Everyone will get in. I'm sure it'll be fine, but please do that. And yeah, so I really hope everyone did have a good time. It's such a huge transition from last year. But before I introduce our next speaker, can I get a round of applause for every single speaker, sponsor, panelist, community partner, media partner, Zebu team, and more importantly, you! So, people know me for pushing generational change, and you guys are making it happen. But before I introduce our next speaker, I have a special favor to ask. You've noticed we're streaming this around the world. Can we please, on the count of 3, do a massive Zebu Live? 1, 2, 3. Zebu Live! Okay, and now, without further ado, the man himself, the youngest ever star on Dragon's Den, founder of Social Chain, and currently building at Web3 speed, not one, but 2 companies, Flight Story and thirdweb, Steven Bartlett.
I'll interview myself. Oh, here you are.
Wow. It's the most crowded space I've seen here in the last 2 days. So I guess you all guys waited for this moment, and the moment is here. We're having a very special, very friendly fireside here today with a friend of mine, Steven, who just joined us. I would like to start with audience with a question. Please raise your hand who actually seen any of Steven's podcast, any of his Dragon's Den shows.
Or if you haven't also,
go,
please
go. Amazing, amazing. So, Steven, the goal of today's fireside chat is not to have some official questions, not to discuss any of your business in particular, but actually have a friendly chat for all of these people who stayed here and been waiting for you for months now to know you much better as a person. What is your end goal? What do you enjoy doing in life? And what are you pursuing in your entrepreneurial and personal life? Sure.
First of all, thank you for being here. I know it's Friday and everybody wants to go home, so I appreciate it. It means a lot to me. In terms of your first question about end goal, once upon a time, I used to orientate my life around end goals, and it didn't take me long to figure out that that was probably a bad idea, because as you would have experienced in your own lives, once you get to those, those pistes, those false precipices when you're climbing that mountain, or those false finish lines, they're always quite anticlimactical. So I've tried to redesign my life over the last couple of years to design it with factors that I believe will allow me to be fulfilled and motivated over the next 10, 20, 30, 40 years. So if I'm working towards a challenge, keyword challenge, toward is also a keyword because it speaks to forward motion. If I'm working towards a challenge surrounded by people that I love and it's a meaningful goal, then I think I'll be motivated and stabilized. And I think all of those words are super key. One of the reasons why I say challenge again is because if we're too far in our comfort zones, as the motivation psychologist that I know well, Daniel Pink, has taught me, we become bored. If we're too far outside of our zone of comfort, we become intimidated. So there's a certain level of challenge, one step outside of our comfort zones that I keep myself in. And that's also in part why I got myself into Web3. It's also why when the noise started happening around this thing called blockchain technologies and NFTs, I knew that in order to keep myself motivated from a professional standpoint, I had to lean in. And that's where I find myself. I have a number of different companies. I'll give you a little bit of an overview of my life. So I have my podcast called The Diary of a CEO, which hopefully some of you know, because a couple of you put your hands up. Thank you. A lot of you will know, because it's been on air for about 20 years now, Dragon's Den, I do that as well. After leaving Social Chain, which was the social media business I built for 10 years, I went into psychedelics. Again, this is part of me keeping myself challenged, and I worked as a creative director in the psychedelics industry for a little while as a big investor in a company. That company then went public at a $3 billion valuation last year. It's a Peter Thiel-backed company. And then I got really intrigued by what I saw going on in the world of blockchain, because it reminded me of the reason why I got in social media. All of the hallmarks of a wave coming into shore were there. There was the pessimism. There was the hype and the euphoria. And underneath all of that, as was the case with social media, when I used to go into those rooms in 2012 and tell people about it, there was a technology that enabled our lives to become easier, better, faster, cheaper in things that we're trying to do right now. And so whenever I've spotted that over the last 10, 15 years, I lean in. Same with psychedelics. Same reason I got involved in there. Because when you look at the clinical studies and you put all of the naysayers and the pessimism aside, the clinical studies are clear. And the psilocybin studies that have just been released, for example, show that in many cases, treatment-resistant depression can be cured, as far as clinical scientists consider cured, with one dose of a psilocybin treatment. That's what I orientate my life on. It's looking past noise at fundamental technology that will make our lives easier, better, faster, cheaper. And that's why I'm in the Web3 space.
Wow, this is hell of a reply. You're a serial entrepreneur. You're having the biggest UK-based and European-based podcast. Recently, you just reached 10 million monthly views, so congrats to you. Let's give a round of applause, guys. You are also the youngest Dragon Dan who recently joined, so yeah. So there is a lot to talk about yourself. The question I have to you, how do you define success and whether you are a successful person?
Yeah, it kind of goes back to what I said earlier. So striving towards meaningful goals with people I love and feeling challenged. And with that, if we're talking about success as an individual, you have to then factor in the personal stuff. And that's a sense of like personal balance. You know, Maslow's hierarchy of needs is great, but the thing that's missing from the bottom level, as Simon Sinek said on my podcast 2 weeks ago, is connection. As Simon Sinek said to me, people don't kill themselves because they're thirsty. They don't kill themselves because they're hungry, but they do kill themselves when they're lonely and when they're lacking connection in their lives. So you can have all of the material trappings of a professionally successful life, but if you don't have connection, then you're never going to have a fully rounded life. I learned that lesson way too late. I sacrificed everything, especially when I was building Social Chain, to become rich because I thought that would make me happy, sexy millionaire that I was striving to be. I thought that was the game. And then I felt the feelings of loneliness. I felt that emptiness inside of me. I didn't know what it was because 10-year-old Steve, who was insecure because he was the only black kid in an all-white area and because our family were poorer than anyone I'd ever seen in my area, was orientated purely and driven purely by insecurity and shame, which, by the way, are two of the biggest motivators I've ever seen, having interviewed 150, 170 amazing athletes and stars and billionaires. Shame and insecurity are the single biggest motivators I've ever discovered. And so I sacrificed all of connection and many other things for the sake of money. The other thing I'll say for true happiness is your health, which we don't really talk about enough because, again, especially when you're younger, you take it for granted until something happens. But 2.5 years ago, having been that guy who said, which I imagine a lot of you are as well, that I'm going to finally take my health seriously, I'm going to go to the gym and work out, when I saw what was happening with the pandemic and how people, based on their current health situation, were affected entirely differently, and I saw the fragility of health, and I realized this really important lesson that everything I am, every goal I have, every dream I have, every company I founded, my dog, my girlfriend, my mum, all of it rests on this tectonic plate that I didn't even know was there called my health. You remove my health, you remove everything I have. If you remove my dog, I still have everything else. If you remove my girlfriend, I still have everything else. But if you remove my health, I lose everything. So that has to be my first priority, logically. That has to be priority number one. So now I've orientated my life around that, where sleep's number one, eating's number one, and I don't miss a day in the gym. Haven't done for a while. We track it with my friends, some of which are here, and 90% of days in 2022, I've been to the gym or I've done exercise. So that's the foundation of my personal success.
Wow, this is a very powerful statement. You just touched upon the topic of your health and health being the top priority for you, which I personally respect a lot. What helps you to stay alive, to stay active 24/7? Is it some type of meditation? Is it breathing exercises? Perhaps you have some morning routine?
No, that's all bullshit. So when I read about these successful people and I read about their morning routines and how perfect they are, I just can't relate. And but I understand, because you've got to write an article, you've got to write a book, and if I want to sell you the article or if I want to sell you the book, I have to create something that feels special, unique, complicated. I'm a mess in pretty much every sense of the term. I'm unorganized. I wake up when I wake up. The sun is my alarm clock. I stumble out of bed. There's no real routine to this. I might go over and pick up. I'm not saying it's the perfect thing. I'm just saying it's who I am. I'll go over, look at my phone straight away with one eye open. I hear in the success books you're not supposed to do that. Here you're meant to do like yoga, sit there, journal, go for a jog, like spin around 3 times and tap your head. I've never done any of that nonsense, and it's been fine for me. So I can't relate to all of that stuff. And life is really much simpler. Like when we seek to understand how to live our lives in an optimal manner, we don't need to look forward, or we don't need to look into these complicated courses and systems. We actually need to look back. Which is like, how did our ancestors live their lives? They lived in small groups, connected with each other. They moved their bodies every single day because they had to. They didn't rely on tapping a glass screen to get their food, or to find a date, or to talk to their friends. Connection was central to the way they lived their lives. They ate food that they could catch or find in the ground, water, sunlight, nature, another huge one that I never appreciated before. But then I read about these studies in prisons where prisoners looking out on concrete versus prisoners looking out on a tree had a 30% difference in their rate of depression. So I try and think about the fundamentals, like eat well, sleep well, move my body, spend time with my friends and family. Outside of that, it doesn't need to be much more complicated than that.
Got it. Who is your mentor right now?
I don't have a mentor because we have this thing called the internet. And I think I think this narrative that you need a mentor is actually counterproductive, because you wouldn't believe how many young people DM me and say, Steve, I have this huge idea, but I haven't found a mentor yet. As if they're trapped in a jail and the mentor is the key. I understand that thinking in a pre-internet world, but in a world where you have you have every podcast, you have Elon Musk, Mark, you have all of everybody in that glass screen. I think we've overstated the value of a mentor. It doesn't mean that they're not valuable at all. It just means the most important thing is actually teaching people, specifically young people, how to go and find information, how to research information, because you have, as I said, you have all the world's greatest minds talking in front of you, writing books online, recording podcasts. But I do actually believe that when I get those messages from young kids that say, I have this big idea, but I haven't found a mentor yet, so I don't know, like, how do I find a mentor, Steve? I actually think it's something else. I think it's the same procrastination you see when you've got to do that big piece of work or that essay, but you end up going and washing the dishes. It's because we procrastinate when there's psychological discomfort associated with a task and we don't feel competent yet with starting it. So sometimes we find reasons why we can't start yet. And that's what I think it is, because I think you know how to Google. So I think coming to me with a fake problem, like, I can't start yet because I haven't found a mentor, I think that's a nice way to justify someone's own procrastination.
I mean, it's really fascinating for me personally, coming from you, that being productive, let's say, being successful doesn't require you to be that organized, that structured, as you just mentioned.
As long as you know you're not that thing. Exactly. Self-awareness is the key. So imagine if I didn't know I wasn't organized and I tried to build a business. Imagine if I didn't know my weaknesses and tried to build a business. Then we're all fucked, right? But I know what I'm bad at, and I also know what I'm good at, and so I mitigate the potential risk of my deficiencies by putting people there that are way better than me and them telling me what to do. And that's really it. This is great. I've thought about this over the last couple of months and years, that I'm really good at a very simple and small amount of things. But because I've doubled down on that thing that I'm really good at, like I'm not good at English, maths, I'm not good at these things, But I've tripled down on the thing that I'm good at, and that's been enough for me in my career. And Jimmy Carr came on the podcast and he said, listen, we don't need any more people that are shit at physics. We don't need any more D's in physics. If you're getting a D and an E in physics, forget it. Just go and double down on the thing you're good at. And there's a lot of wisdom in that crass statement.
In this case, I do believe return on investment of your time, of your energies, that is like the main metric you're looking for, whatever you do. Even here right now, you understand that you are educating potentially tens of thousands of people watching us today live, and that is basically your return on being here. How do you evaluate these opportunities in traditional business, in Web2 world? What are those factors you're looking for whenever investing in some projects? Is it the way to onboard people? Is it some kind of way to educate masses who do not have this equality that, for example, you and me here in Europe have, or it's something different for you?
So on to your first point about time, the further I've got in my career, the more I've realized that time is literally the center point of my influence, and how I allocate it every day is the only thing that determines my outcomes. And I remember writing about in my book that if you see it like poker chips, if you live to about 80 or 90 years old, you get 500,000 poker chips given to you in your life. Every day you wake up, you've slept for 9 hours. My maths is pretty shit, so you slept for 8 hours, you've got 16 poker chips left. And imagine it like a roulette table. You then place those 16 chips every day, hopefully in alignment with things that will move you closer to your goals. Sometimes we don't. Sometimes which is fine if you realize that balance is important. Sometimes we place 2 of our chips on Netflix. So every time I go through my to-do list and every time I'm presented with an opportunity to speak or do something, I think about it in the context of those chips. Like I've got 16 today. I spend them today, the roulette wheel spins, and it gives me a return based on how I've placed my chips. I have 500,000 of these chips in my life that are going to determine all of my outcomes across my professional, my relationships, my businesses, everything. So you get much better at saying no when you realize the finality of your life. This is something I don't think people understand, is I don't think we really understand that we're going to die. I also don't think we can comprehend the idea of infinity, but I don't think we can comprehend the idea of finality, that we are going to die. And that every one of these precious moments is the only currency we have. You can never get more of them, you can't buy more of them. Work on your health, you might earn a few more. And then to your second question about, so that framework has allowed me to say no to things much better and to focus myself, but also our teams on, as we call it at ThirdWeb, what our A+ problem is. What is the number one thing that we should be focusing our energy on if we are to achieve our objectives? And then your second question was about how my sort of investment framework. When I'm making investments, it's all about people. You know, the worst investments I've ever done is where I've allowed myself to get blindsided by my love of the product. And then, so, you know, it's almost like looking down. I remember someone coming to my office, my first ever investment, looking down at the product they'd made. I fell in love, I invested. What I should have done is I should have looked up at the entrepreneur. Now, in that particular case, the product was amazing. The entrepreneurs were not. And it's quite an interesting story because it ends up failing. The company fails, the entrepreneurs behind it do some pretty criminal stuff. And then a management team comes in and takes on the product. That product now is flying. I only put 25K in and I put it in 8 years ago, but it's now one of the best in its industry, making about 100K, about 6 figures a week. So that's, if anything, highlighted that those bad entrepreneurs could have taken a good thing down. A bad idea with a great entrepreneur is actually not a bad investment. Because if you can understand the characteristics of the person, you can understand how they'll behave in the future. If they're humble, that means they're probably going to pivot when the feedback contradicts their hypothesis. If they're stubborn, they will go down with the ship. I'm looking for entrepreneurs that have great personal characteristics, because if I understand those characteristics, I can understand that when shit hits the fan, or when the data tells them there's no product market fit, they will change. So I bet on entrepreneurs first and foremost. Oftentimes I don't know the industry well enough to understand if the product is good. All about the people. And even in the NFT space, and even in the Web3 space, for me, it's all about the people. That is the easiest thing to understand, and it's the most important thing to understand. So I hear these presentations and all this stuff, and I'm rarely listening too closely. I'm much more focused on the person that stood there, their background, their track record, how they'll behave, their character, their humility, their insecurities, their ego.
Wow, basically you didn't realize it yet, that is a personal characteristics Steven just shared with us. If you want to join his team, that's basically what type of people he's looking to join.
We are hiring at thirdweb, and Flight Story. You can see both teams here. We're hiring like crazy. So if you're the best in the world and you want to come and join a team of the best in the world, then please come and apply. And you can, look, I'm not going to say how to apply, because if you don't have that much initiative, you're probably not right for us, but, but please come and apply.
You joined Dragon's Den as the youngest ever dragon to join it at the age of 28. There are a lot of, let's call them oldies in a positive way. In a positive way.
I didn't say that, Deborah. I didn't. Peter, I did not call you an oldie.
Experienced people.
They're experienced, yeah.
Has been there before you for many, many years.
I think Tuka's the oldest, actually. Tuka's the oldest, yeah.
What was their approach to you? Like, how did they consider you coming to them as a 20-year-old?
Yeah, I got to meet them before the show started, and they were, and I wouldn't say this, I wouldn't bullshit, I'd just say something else. They were so nice. I remember Peter saying to me, and he really, really meant it. He went, if you're successful on this show, we're all successful on this show. And he said, in the den, we go to war sometimes, obviously, because it's real, it's my money, I want the deal, everyone's watching, I don't want to lose. But outside of the den, when we're in that green room, we're a team. We're a team, we represent each other, we look after each other, we support each other. And all of them individually took me for dinner and gave me advice on how to be a good dragon, what I should know, and all those things. And then even in my first season, when I beat Peter Jones for that first deal, Cheese Geek, the investment I did, he turned to me and he was like, well done, that was amazing. That was a really, really good pitch. The way you delivered that, and the way you said that, and the way you ended it, he was like, perfect. And that's what he's been like. And then obviously, you know, I want another deal, and another deal, and another deal, and things got a little bit frosty, and now we're at war. So he's like mentored me, and now it's like that Karate Kid against Mr. Miyagi or whatever, so. But no, they're lovely.
Wow, this is huge. Like,
and I have to say, I just want to say, I still can't believe it. Like, I watched that show when I was 12. I watched Peter Jones on that show when I was 12 at home. So sitting between them now, like looking to my left and seeing Peter Jones, and then on my right seeing Deborah Meaden, it's like I stepped into the TV. It's still weird. I genuinely, from the bottom of my heart, I don't know what the fuck is going on. And genuinely, honestly, I have moments where I'm like, fuck. Like if they saw on the footage of me just like staring at Peter, I'm like, the fuck, like looking at his socks and being like looking at it's still weird for me. Like, to be fair, all of this stuff is really weird for me. I don't really understand it, but I'm just going with it, so.
And yet you're that successful, meaning that sometimes understanding less means more. That's basically in your case.
Yeah, it's a really good point, because we don't talk about that enough, especially with young people. We tend to think that our inexperience is such a huge disadvantage. But I can't tell you from doing my podcast how much naivety, not understanding how an industry currently works, not understanding how people currently build companies is an unbelievable pathway to innovation. Not knowing convention means that often, instead of just taking convention, we go and create a new solution. And as it relates to Social Chain, that's 100% why that business was the most successful. Because we hired, you know, at one point we said the average age of our workforce, when we had hundreds of people, was about 20 years old. My thesis was, if you want to win the future, you need the right balance of today and yesterday. Which meant a 16-year-old that understands how to use TikTok sat next to someone that's 45 and has worked at MediaCom for 25 years. What if those two people work together? Then we'll win tomorrow. And if both of those people had equal say on their specialisms, naivety is just the most brilliant thing. And the companies that I worked with, so 10 years traveling around every corner of the world, with CEOs and founders, sat in the room of the biggest brands in the world, Apple, Logitech, you know, in this country, the Boohoos, the Jim, all of the big brands. I got to see a window into why some of them won and some of them lost. And those that valued naivety were the ones that continued to win. The ones that I remember Umar continually saying to me, like, we need to hire more young people, we need to hire more kids. And I watched him beat the whole industry because of that. Fresh minds.
What you just mentioned, connectedness between people, like cooperating with each other, growing together, that is basically the definition of Web3. The space is still small, still early, still that instead of competing in this red ocean, just like traditional businesses, You can see it everywhere. Social media, financial banking, like the traditional finance and stuff like that. In Web3, we're complementing each other. We're still early, a couple of million people there. Recently, you had another huge achievement in your portfolio. You raised $24 million US for your startup, thirdweb. It's currently valued at $160 million US. You joined the space relatively not that long ago. The question from me to start this topic of Web3 is, what is your thesis for this space? Is there something specific you're looking here to be in 5-10 years from now? Why have you started investing in Web3? What is this idea that you were pursuing in the space?
Yeah, so, it was last year I was having a conversation with Furcon, when I was 20 years old, I went out to San Francisco. So I'd left my startup, and who remembers Bebo by a show of hands? The old social network, pretty much all of you, right? 50%. So I'd left my startup. I sent a cold email to Michael Birch, who was the founder of Bebo. And I'd just seen Michael had bought back Bebo for $1 million. He sold it for like $700-800 million a couple of years before. He bought it back for $1 million when it had gone under. And I thought it was cool, part of my childhood. I emailed their team and said, here's 5 reasons why girls call me back when they meet me in a bar and 5 reasons they don't. That was the email. They responded to me within 24 hours because it was just a jokey email, but it was showing my skills and my flaws. They loved the email. They responded back, said, we'd love you to come out and help us bring Bebo back. So went over there. And while I was there, I met a guy called Furcon, he's the best entrepreneur / developer that I've ever encountered in my career. A real default to anything can be done with technology and that we can do it. And so 10 years later, after leaving Social Chain, when I'm thinking about this Web3 space, I start having conversations with Furcon, who I'd been working with 10 years before, about where the opportunity was. And our first idea was to create something called access packs. Very kind of simple idea that you could drop packs full of randomized access. So Gary Vaynerchuk, he could drop a pack, like a Pokemon style pack of 100 packs, and inside there's different tiers of access to Gary Vaynerchuk. I thought this could be used across the creator economy. I thought brands who currently, when they drop like Yeezys and they ask for your email address and it's this kind of opaque raffle, could have a transparent way of distributing, a transparent and fair way of distributing randomized access to buying the next pair of Yeezys instead of email lists, and you don't know if there's favoritism going on and you can't see what's behind it. That was the thesis. So we started building access packs for several months. And we realized that the infrastructure layer that was required to create access packs hadn't really been built. And so I remember Furcon calling me and saying, because there's a real deficit in that infrastructure layer, and because we're having to build it, what we've actually created is the entire infrastructure platform that anybody would need to create an access packs or an app of their own. So instead of building access packs, why don't we just build out the infrastructure layer that's missing, which will allow developers, the next 10 million developers that are coming into Web3 and that are having to learn new coding languages and hire people and take years building out that infrastructure layer themselves. Why don't we build it? That's a much bigger challenge. It's a much riskier challenge in terms of an entrepreneurial pursuit because it tends to be a winner-takes-all environment, like your Stripes or your AWSs. And thankfully, because of the phase that we are in our careers, and there's, Nacho's here from the thirdweb team as well, we wanted the bigger challenge. We thought, let's just go for the whole infrastructure layer, and that's what thirdweb is. It'll allow anyone that's building in Web3 not to have to do all of that work and waste years of their time, give you the tools you need to deploy, build your own Web3 applications using our platform, our SDKs, and our other features. So, and it took off. That thesis that Furcon had was correct, and in a couple of months we had almost 100,000 projects that had been built on top of thirdweb. Grows every week. Last week was our top week since we'd launched, and we were just celebrating that last night on our all hands. And in many weeks we have millions and millions of dollars flowing through smart contracts that have been built on top of thirdweb. And we feel like we're only just getting started. So we announced a month ago that Shopify, Coinbase, and Katie Hahn Ventures and Polygon had all invested in thirdweb, and we're going to use that money to bring in hopefully the next 10 million developers into the Web3 ecosystem.
Wow. You just named a couple of companies you are already in partnership with, you are about to cooperate with, and all of these companies are fully centralized. Those are representatives of traditional Web 2 world. The biggest issue that perhaps right now we have in Web 3 is a brawl between centralization, decentralization. Like, should the content, should the platform, should all your activity identity should be owned by a person itself, should be changed, edited through open code, or still there should be a committee, maybe some entity who is controlling all of it. Do you believe that in the future we're going into the full decentralization, or you cannot see a future like this?
We tend to think, when we have these conversations, we tend to think in really binary ways, like it's going to be one or the other, and I just don't think that's going to be true. At least not for the next 10, 20 years. What I think will happen, and you know, sometimes people talk about this web sort of 2.5, I think industries where centralization and a lack of transparency and a lack of veritability, if that's even a word, verification is a problem, those ones are going to change drastically over the next couple of years. This doesn't mean my local flower shop is going to change because they don't have a centralization problem. But there are industries, whether it's finance, when we talk about verification, whether it's art, that do have that as a problem. They're contending with logistics as another one, events as another one, where verification of tickets and is a problem. So I don't think, you know, a lot of people talk about Web3 just eating up everything and changing every industry. I don't think that's entirely accurate, but I do think that there's going to be a real war on industries like we've seen with DeFi, where they do have a centralization problem, where that middleman is causing problems, even with music and streaming services, where artists are getting a tiny royalty on the value that they're creating. Those industries are going to see, they're going to be absolutely torn to pieces by Web3 and this new technology.
Wow, that's an amazing reply.
And that brings me on to a point that I wanted to talk about, which is, you know, let's talk rug pulls. One guy just left. He was a rug puller and he's gone. Now, I just wanted to say that when you're assessing the value of an NFT project, you should assess it on the basis of what I've just said, which is, how does the underlying technology, that is the blockchain, do something here that couldn't be done in Web 2? What is it solving for? This NFT project. So if I said I'm launching an NFT project and it's going to allow you access to some great events, well, why do you need the blockchain for that? And that's the question you should be asking. The characteristics that make the blockchain special and all of it that it enables, transparency, decentralization, verification, if the NFT project isn't using those three things to create a better solution, then it is probably a rug pull. If it just looks like a rock, it's probably just a rock. Do you know what I mean? And it's hard in these moments of hype and euphoria to see through that and to really ask yourself that question. Another way of saying it is like, could this have been done in Web 2? If it could have, then it's probably not going to last in Web 3 because it's not tapping into the potential of that underlying technology. And you know, these NFT projects, man, like, in Web 2, let's talk about the world that came before Web 3. When Tim Cook comes on stage, he doesn't start with, the iPhone costs $2,000, here's the box, and here's what we're thinking of doing it, here's where you can buy it. He starts with what they've built. He starts with all of the features, the memory, the battery life, how it's going to make your life better. Then they tell you the price. What we're seeing is in the moment is this kind of inversion of that. No one's starting with the why. They're starting with the what. And that's another thing that it's kind of like my filter when I'm assessing an NFT project. I almost would love us to get to a place with NFTs where we don't talk in terms of roadmaps. Because a roadmap is a promise. I would like to get to a point where we talk in terms of value. Because if Tim Cook comes on stage and goes, I'm going to sell you the packaging today, I want the money now, and we'll work on it over the next 5 years, the iPhone, none of you would go for that. When we get past these boom and bust and we get past the euphoria, sense will take over, and we'll have a higher expectation of that underlying value. So projects that can deliver some value, not all of it, but some value up front, which is enough to justify the cost. Those are the ones that will survive these bear times.
And I absolutely love it. I would like to take a pause for a couple of minutes from Web3 and just give you some props in a sense. I haven't realized how big of a deal are you based here in London till the moment I landed here. In the last 2 days at the conference, I was approached by, I believe, like 100 people just coming to me who I've never met before and asking some questions that I can bring on stage here today. Logical, I cannot bring all of those. And I even had a chat with some of your third web representatives and asking them, what is one thing you would like to ask Steve? The reply was nothing. If I need to ask something, he's responsive. I can just message him right now. I'm going to get an answer in a couple of hours. But at the same time, there are some of cool questions that I promised Zebu Live team to bring on stage. So just a quick quiz, 10 questions, no way for thinking. You answer like this.
Okay, quick fire.
Sounds good.
Okay.
What is your favorite color?
Black. Easy.
What is the last book you read?
Lost Connections by Johanna Hari, which is all about the 9 real reasons why we're depressed and anxious. And it's about, fundamentally, it's about connection, so.
Okay. What is the CEO of your dream to bring to your podcast? Only one.
Elon Musk, Mark Zuckerberg, Richard Branson, and all for different reasons. It's not an endorsement of any of those individuals. It's because there's something interesting there that I want to get to. So Michelle Obama, we're talking to her team at the moment. Richard Branson, talking to them. Yeah.
Cool. It's 5, 6 of them. Amazing.
We had Brian at Coinbase as well. He was great. That was great.
Be honest with us. Who is the most friendly dragon?
Oh, friendly probably. They're all so friendly. Like Peter.
Off stage.
I mean, on stage, me and Tuka always go to war because we're like it's like 2 worlds colliding. It's like Web 1 and Web 7 colliding or something. There's Peter Jones, and that would probably surprise you. But I remember in the first year, like if he wants to go for a cigarette, him leaning over to me and going, "You wouldn't mind if I go for a cigarette, would you?" I'm like, "What the fuck?" I'm like, "You have permission, Peter, to go." Like. I couldn't believe it. He's such a gentle giant. He's a quite tough guy on screen, but he's such a sweet man, honestly. Such a sweet man. So I'd say Peter.
Love it. What is the worst investment you've ever made in your life?
I was thinking of like ex-girlfriends and stuff.
You answered it. Nice.
Whenever I invested in something I didn't understand based on someone's word. So, because what ends up happening, especially if it's a public company or if it's an NFT project, is when it goes down, you haven't got your own thesis to keep you calm. So you'll panic sell. So it will always be investing in anything where, when I'm doing it based on someone's word and I don't really understand what's going on there. Luna. Like I didn't invest in Luna, but that's a good example of where a lot of my friends were like, go on, invest in it. I'm getting 20% yield on this. And I was thinking, I don't really understand it. How can you get 20%? That seems like magic, And then that story didn't end well. But yeah, and so I've done a few investments in different areas where I did it based on someone's word, and I've always regretted it.
You just mentioned investing in Luna. If there is one niche of Web3, gamify, DeFi, anything else, the NFTs, that you need to invest till the end of your life?
It's infrastructure, and that's why we're building thirdweb, because when there's a gold rush, you can go out into the river with a pan if you want to and try and find gold, or you can build the pans. You can sell the pans that people are going to need. You can do a picks and shovels play, and that's what infrastructure is to me. We are going to need a huge amount of infrastructure. There's only going to be a few winners. It's almost emerging now who those winners are going to be. I think thirdweb is going to be one of those winners. I'm pretty confident of that. And so if I was deploying capital now, I know these companies that are the infrastructure players are going to be worth tens of billions because it is a winner-takes-all space. So I'd be investing in infrastructure companies like thirdweb.
Would you move to Mars in 2040?
Say that again?
Would you move to Mars in 2040?
No. No. Not until like 100,000 people have gone and come back, and I've had a chance to speak to them. Would I take that risk? And why he wants to be in Mars? What's there? There's nothing going on there, right? You've got to wait till it's a bit of a party.
If you want to interview Elon Musk, most probably he's there.
I don't think Elon's going to go in 2014. I think he's going to hang around.
Okay.
I think he says he wants to die there, doesn't he?
Kinda.
That's what he said, right?
Yeah. What is your favorite series, if you ever have time?
I just don't watch anything. But I watch really obscure things that you'd probably want to check. I was going to say check my hard drive. But I watch really strange things like police interrogation videos. I'll spend like 2 hours watching a police interrogation because I find it fascinating how someone can walk in, and it's almost probably linked to why I do my podcast. You know, in police interrogation, someone walks in and they're like, I have no idea. I wasn't there. I don't know who he was. And then an hour and a half later, because of psychology and questioning, the guy's telling you how he put the knife in and where he's putting you and why he did it, and he's crying and he's calling his mum. And I just find the movement of psychology in an hour or two, because of questioning, so fascinating. So things like that, prison breaks, random stuff, lots of serial killer stuff. That's why I think if you looked at my browsing history, you'd probably call the police. But
Nike or Adidas?
Nike, I think they're cooler. Oh shit, are they here?
And the last one, what is the best place in London?
Coco's tonight.
Let's come back to Web3, if you don't mind. We all here are people. We're building the space by people, for people. So I do believe that community is a very special word in Web3. What does it mean to you, and whether any project you're building in Web3 will be 100% focused on people or something else?
Yeah, so I mean, as I've said earlier, the amount of times I've mentioned connection in this talk, and I've talked about it being the bottom level of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, or at least it should have been, connection is something that we all are seeking, and it's also something that's in decaying supply in the world because of the way we live our lives. There's this interesting study where they asked Americans, how many people have you got that you could turn to in a time of crisis? They asked this question pretty much every year. 15 years ago, the answer to that question was 3. Today, the medium answer to that question is 0. And that speaks to why community is so unbelievably important, going back to our tribes and things like that. And when you're building something, when you're building a business or you're building something in Web3 or a project, having people around you that can hold the weight of the challenges with you and share that weight with you and help you understand and feel supported and understood and heard, it cannot be understated. And so there are some great projects in Web3 that are just about great community. And I'm bullish on those things. It's part of the reason why going outside and having the drinks in the foyer or going to Coco's tonight is of any value to any of you because of its community. So yeah, it's super important. And I'm building my own project, which, based on what I've said earlier, I probably shouldn't shill until I've done it. But and it's hoping to give entrepreneurs that sense of community. So we're working very hard on that, working very hard to find the right partners, and there'll be basically a community of 10,000 entrepreneurs that we hope to be able to take around the world with us to various places like Necker Island. I'm letting all the cats out the bag here, but it is what it is. I know the team are here. And give them the community, the support, the network that some people are fortunate enough to have over there in San Francisco because of their geographical location. But how do we do that for tens of thousands of builders and entrepreneurs in a more distributed way, online, using the blockchain?
Love it.
It's going to be called DOAC Founders Club. So
Cannot agree.
DOAC, D-O-A-C-O, Founders Club. So it's going to be a club of founders, about 10,000 people. And we're taking an approach where we don't want to release a roadmap. So I want the thing to be complete when we launch it, so you know exactly what you're getting in terms of, in terms of all the tiers and all the utilities. So. And
you're launching it through NFTs?
Yeah.
Any DAOs there
Launched
as well?
on thirdweb, of course.
Any DAOs there as well?
Any?
DAO.
We're considering that at the moment, but where we are at the moment is we've literally spent about 1.5 years because I'm obsessed with creating something that's like truly useful that couldn't have been done in Web 2. So yeah.
Yeah, I'm going to address the audience right now. I know that we're running late, but I'm going to do something that I do believe Zebu Live team is not going to go against. I'm going to ask you, should we go for another 15, 20 minutes?
Can they ask some questions?
We're still going to have some time for questions. There are going to be questions to the audience. Should we go with it?
Yes, let's do that.
Yeah.
This gentleman here.
Steve, I've been following you for a while. I'm listening to your podcasts. I'm fascinated by your sharpness, your quickness, your level of articulation. Where is this from? Are you listening to something?
Great question. You know, no one's ever asked me that. And so I want to tell you, the reason why I think that's a great question is because it's been so pivotal to my personal success, being able to speak and also to deliver an idea in a crystallized way. And of course, I wasn't born with that ability. So I'll take you back. So 14 years old, my head teacher in my school asks me to do a speech, gives me this piece of paper to read to 30 parents. I'm shaking so much that I can't read the words. My hands are shaking so much, so I just make the words up. Fast forward a couple of years, a guy at Social Chain, my company, says to me, Steve, you should start building a personal brand, right? And I go, I'm not interested. Because you should let's record a video tonight. This was the first video I'd ever recorded on camera. He takes me to this apartment after work on the Saturday, and it's about 2 p.m. So in the video, it's only a 2-minute video we're recording. You'll see it's light outside. I sat there for 7 hours trying to record that video. So the 2-minute video in the background goes from light to dark, from day to night time, because I just couldn't get the words out. I didn't know what to say. The thing that changed the game for me is at one point I decided that I was going to start writing quotes every day. And what that means is I have a pact. I have a pact with my 7 followers I had at that time and with myself that every day, everything that's happening to me, I'm going to be thinking about it, and at the end of the day, I'm going to crystallize it into a 140 character, at the time when Twitter was 140 characters, quote. And because I had that obligation to write my ideas down and to frequently go on video and record myself, after 7 years of spending pretty much every day thinking about what's happening to me, in the case of the Diary of a CEO, then trying to crystallize it into ideas and record it on a Sunday, or writing it into short quotes that people could relate to, and continually for years getting the A/B testing feedback and looking at the analytics, that continual repetition, because I had an Instagram to run and a vlog on YouTube to run, is the reason why I've been able to deliver ideas in a succinct way and to speak in a much more succinct way. I cannot underestimate the importance to you. I can't understate the importance of having some way where you are obligated to produce content, whether it's in a journal on a Medium blog, whether it's in your own diary and then you're going to turn it into a little picture for LinkedIn every week, some way where you're forcing yourself. Because if you don't force yourself, let's be honest, it will never be a priority. And it's been the single biggest unappreciated driver of my personal success, has been forcing myself to think about what's going on in my life, turning it into an idea, and then posting it somewhere. And especially as it relates to the Diary of a CEO, because we all go through life, right? We all have 7 days in a week. But the wisdom you garner from those 7 days is different. Some of you never even think about what's happened to you, why you reacted like that with your partner. If I have a bad reaction to my girlfriend, I'm then on air talking to a relationship psychologist or writing it in my diary to try and make a quote out of it. So I'm getting more wisdom in those 7 days because I'm looking at what's happened, I'm turning it into a truth, and then I'm having to post it. Genuinely, I don't know if I've been able to impress upon you how important that's been for me. That's why I said it's such a good question, because I've only figured out that in hindsight. I've only figured out that I thought personal branding was all about views and followers and selling whatever. No, it's the best exercise in personal development you'll ever find.
Hi, Steve. Followed your podcast and all your shows for a while now, and thank you so much for your very insightful and inspiring talk now and throughout your other channels. And great response to your previous question as well. Extending on that, what are some of the personality traits or characteristics that you have, of course, worked on as one of the things that you already talked about, but extending on that, and what are some of the personality traits and characteristics that you look for in the founders that you're investing in? Thank you.
Yeah, in founders, I think, so I know that every business, regardless of how smart you are, is going to go through a similar set of bullshit. There's going to be a day where you wake up where things are so unbelievably difficult that any sane person should and would give up. And that's usually why people quit, because the weight of the why becomes overwhelmed by the weight of the dire situation. And so because I know that's coming in your business, in your project, in your NFT project, your Web3 startup, because I know you're going to have those days of hell, and I know you're going to have them one after the other, and they're just going to keep coming, I need to find character traits that are going to be able to deal with that situation. So of course, resilience is an important one. The second point that's going to keep you moving when everything is against you and every piece of evidence you have and every metric says quit is the fact that you're doing this for a very intrinsically motivated reason. It's so aligned with your passions that you would just do it anyway. You're not doing it because you think it will make you money. You're doing it because you're so innately driven by some change you want to see in the world. So that real intrinsic genuine why, and then that level of resilience can't be understated. One of the analogies I love to give, and I'll give it again because I think it stays with people, is when like a room is on fire, you typically have three types of people. Person number one, frozen with fear. They can't move. They're going to burn to death. Person number two, screaming that the room is on fire. The room is on fire. The room is on fire. Oh my God. You'll know these people in your businesses and teams. They spread panic. And the science is clear. If you Google, is stress contagious at work? It is contagious at work. They've done the studies. And then you've got the third type of person, which I call a leader. And that person won't mention the room is on fire. The room is obviously on fire. Okay? They'll spend their entire focus and energy on just figuring out how to get themselves and the other people out of the room. They'll focus on only that which they can control. Those are the people that I like to invest in. People that have that level of, that mindset orientation and that level of resilience.
Let's go with some question from the back so that it's equal to everyone.
Hello.
Hey, Steven, thank you for being here. First of all, I also enjoy YouTube videos about criminals being interviewed. So my wife said I'm super weird to watch them. Now I can say you watch them as well. Maybe we're both weird. Second of all, I was myself in a fire with many people, so I can tell you the three reactions described are very accurate. There were all types of people panicking during the fire. My question is about, you mentioned that when you see an NFT project, you want to make sure that that's something that cannot be done in Web 2, right? That can be done only in Web 3, otherwise it's probably not a great project. My question for you is, what type of projects cannot be done in Web 2, can only be done in Web 3? Can you give a few examples of what are those? Because I have a hard time picturing them, because for me, everything can be done in Web 2 as well. So which one are the ones that cannot be done in Web 2?
Well, anything that relies on what the blockchain enables. So the blockchain enables a new level of decentralization. It enables a new level of transparency. And it enables a new level, especially with non-fungible tokens, a new level of verification, amongst many other things. So if there are situations like with logistics where you're tracking something and how it's transacted across the world, or like ticketing, where you have a verification problem, or like art, because people can fake art, or even, you have it in wine as well. The fraud within the wine industry is horrendous. All of those industries that have problems that the blockchain enables will be completely disrupted by Web3 and the blockchain.
Yeah, hello, Steven. Yep. Is there? It was so interesting. Thank you so much. I work with marketing of Web3, and I have a question about marketing. You have so huge social media, so big YouTube channel, Instagram, Twitter, some other. What's the most first effective channel was when you start it all, like in the start, for marketing? Thank you.
So what's the most effective channel, social media channel when I started? It really depends. So effectiveness is decided by what your objective is. So if you're trying to be a musician, I would imagine the answer would be one of the music channels like SoundCloud or Bandcamp or one of those channels. For me, I was trying to market a B2B social media agency. And where does that audience live? And what's the most cost-effective channel that will allow me to reach them? For me, the answer was LinkedIn. LinkedIn actually came in pretty late in social chain's life, but LinkedIn is the most important. You don't need a huge following there. It's still the platform where an engagement on a post is dictating how many people see the post. So if you can get 100 people to comment on a post, you will reach 100,000 people. And also, it's the only platform where all mediums of content, articles, video, text, and imagery are pretty much the same. It's also the only platform where, not the only one, but it's a platform where they value people way more than brands. If you have a brand page on LinkedIn and you're posting your updates from that, good luck. The head of LinkedIn says you will not reach anybody from your brand page. Get your CEO, your executive, or anyone in your company to post, you'll reach 3 times more people, roughly. Because of the point I said earlier about engagement on LinkedIn, if you're not ending every LinkedIn post you've ever written with a question mark of some sort, with a question, you are losing about 200, 300, 400% of your engagement, because it's still the platform where one comment, if I comment on your post, I know you're going to get pretty much exactly 40,000 more impressions. How do I know that? Because we have an engagement pod at all of our companies, including thirdweb, and when I comment, it will get 40,000 impressions. So even galvanizing your team members to engage on your posts is super smart, but the thing you should all be doing on every post you do is ending it with a question mark. An example would be, if I post a podcast episode or a clip, I might end it with, has anyone heard this episode? Question mark. Or I might post an idea of mine and say, do you agree? I'm encouraging debate. I can talk about every platform individually and the growth hacks and stuff, but I know we've only got 20 minutes. Discord, I think, is the social media platform of the future. And I didn't say that the workplace platform of the future. I said the social media platform of the future. For many years, for I think 6 years ago, I remember giving a presentation where I said that I believed all of our interests would become segmented in their own social networks. And that's what's happened. We've seen this spreading where you'll have a social network for your neighborhood. You'll have a social network for your art interests. And we thought that would carry on. Discord enables you to create mini social networks around interests and communities. There's no newsfeed getting in your way. The newsfeed is dead. In 2018, stories overtook newsfeeds as the #1 way we share things with Fred. The newsfeed is finished, right? And when I think about building and investing in building my own communities, I don't want a big San Francisco-based conglomerate standing between me and my audience and charging me to reach them. Discord holds the answer for that. And I think I'm super bullish on Telegram. I'm super bullish on anywhere that allows me to speak directly to my audience in a non-decentralized way. So Telegram, Discord, SMS. Email newsletter is slightly different, I know, because there's still an algorithm at play filtering things, but even email. It's crazy. Start of my career, I went around the world telling everybody, Facebook, Facebook, Facebook. And then as I got to the tail end of my social media career, I found myself on stage talking about the potential of sending things in the post. Why? Because we've been let down. We thought that when we built an audience of 1 million Facebook likes, we could reach 1 million people. And I remember in 2017 showing some numbers of the 8 biggest publishers in the UK, of which we were one, and there was a 50% year-on-year decline in our reach, which means that just to keep in touch with the same number of people, I have to grow 50% every year, just to break even on my reach. That's a scam. So now we're very orientated. That's why one of the reasons I love podcasting, because it's just an RSS feed. I push that RSS feed to about 30 different streaming services at the same time. So if Apple deletes me, it's all good. I'm over here on Spotify. If they delete me, cool, I'm over here on Castbox. It has a bit more of a decentralized approach to it. Yeah.
Let's take the last one, if any.
Last question. This guy. He's got 2 hands up.
Hey, Steven. Ash from New Kids on the Blockchain. Quick one for you. What would you say to critics out there that say Web3 is the next in a long line of crypto buzzwords in an industry that's obsessed with buzzwords?
Call it what you like. I don't care. It's going to change the world. So. I don't think we should get caught up in terms. Terms are whatever. It's just that was just someone's idea. To try and group what was going on. The term doesn't matter. That's not what I'm interested in or investing in or committing my life to. I'm really obsessed with the underlying technology and how that will make everyone's lives better across various industries in all corners of the world. So.
I guess that's all.
Well-being. Yeah, I mean, it kind of goes back to what I said earlier. Take your dog for a walk, sleep well, make sure you're not sacrificing all of the fundamental things you need to be a functional human being and a happy, stabilized human, and you'll be fine.
Steven, sitting next to you today means a word to me. I hope that people enjoyed it as much as I did. I know that you have a tradition on your podcast. Yeah. At the end of each episode, for those who don't know, Steven is asking a new guest a question from the previous guest. The way how I would like to approach it is as follows. I know that Zebu Live team is going to organize even bigger conference next year. And I would love to share the stage once again with you on one of these days. Yeah. I would like to ask you, what is one question you would like to ask Steven Bartlett in exactly 1 year from now?
I would ask him, it would be, the question would try and get him to be really self-aware about all the downsides of everything. So the downsides of what he's saying, the downsides of how he's living his life, the potential downsides of the companies he's building. It would be, if I had to leave you a question to ask the next person, it would be something like, tell me 3 reasons why the thing you're currently building is going to fail. Those are the questions we don't spend enough time asking. We can all sit here and tell you all of the wonderful reasons why we're going to be successful in our projects, but it's those questions that have saved me from the greatest costs in my life, which is like asking myself why this is not going to work. If you're aware of that, if you're able to have the humility to look past your own romantic hypothesis about what you're doing and how you're living your life, then I think you can really be successful. So what am I wrong about? What have I been wrong about in the past? What do I suspect I might be wrong about now in my business, in my personal philosophy, in the advice I've given you today? Because I think if you know that stuff as well, if you can point at some of those things, it's a high degree of self-awareness.
I hope that exactly in a year from now, we'll be able to ask you the same question here. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you so much. Thank you for waiting, everybody. It means a lot to me. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Steven.